Christmas. I am George from Ireland and I'm in front of Marble Hill House in London. So we are in an area called Twickenham, which when this was built, as the groundbreaking was 1724, this was a village about 10 miles west of London. We're in the county of Middlesex, but by 1889 this was absorbed within Greater London and the county of Middlesex largely abolished. So Marble Hill House, I wonder why it's so named. There is no hill around here, it's very flat. Just the other side of the house is the River Thames. Well, there is some marble in the house, but there's no marble quarry around here. Marble often imported from Italy. So, as I say, construction commenced in 1724, and it's thought that the architect, the Earl of Pembroke, was involved in the construction of the same. But it was Roger Morris who was in charge of actually building it, possibly borrowed Lord Pembroke's design, and Colin Campbell may have been involved too. So it's best known for being the residence of Henrietta Howard, who was the Countess of Suffolk, and she was the long-time maîtresse en titre of George II. So she came from this noble Howard family, been prominent here since the 11th century, since the first Fitzalan Howard came over with William the Conqueror. They'd intermarried with the Anglo-Saxons, they're partly Norman. And of course, in Anglo-Saxon, Howard was Hogwart, as in one who looks after pigs. So a pig farmer. Interestingly, you may know Michael Howard, the former leader of the Conservative Party, and his family. Well, his father came from Romania, was from a Jewish family, and to be typically British, when they moved to Wales, he dropped his name Hecht, the German name for pike as in the fish, and took Howard, not realizing that it was actually derived from Hogwart. So being a pig farmer is, you'd think, the one job that a Jewish person would never do. Anyway, so this is built in the style of Andrea Palladio, the celebrated 16th century Italian architect. And within the UK, it's one of the finest examples of this genre of architecture. It's not that huge, as you can see. I'll give you a bit more of the other elevations. Obviously, we can't entirely because there are woods in the way, but it's not in a great state of repair. Could do with a lick of paint, I think you'll concur. So only in 1734 did the Countess of Suffolk move here, and her family were more prominent in Norfolk. Norfolk and Suffolk are right beside her. She was related to the Duke of Norfolk, and indeed the surname of the Duke of Norfolk is Fitzalan Howard. Anyway, and so indeed she died here and is buried not too far away. She didn't have any children with George II. I'm not sure how they managed that, but they had some sort of forms of contraception at the time, and she had been previously married, but a nobleman might consider it almost a compliment for his wife or daughter, whoever, to be the mistress of the monarch. So the thing is, the monarch was also Supreme Governor of the Church of England and head of the Church of Scotland. I can't remember exactly what his title was in relation to the Church of Scotland, and likewise the Church of Ireland. So you think might be supposed to sort of set some sort of example of morality and right living. And this is a time when fornication and adultery were regarded as absolutely disgraceful. But there he was, flagrantly carrying on this affair with her, and it was widely known about, and the prelates didn't even tut about it. That was like, I mean, people were sent to the gallows for stealing a few shillings, and obviously the clergy would often treat them to a hellfire sermon before these people were suspended from a hemp rope, strangling over 20 minutes. Didn't have the long drop when they were executing them, but the clergy would never find any reason to publicly speak out against the king committing adultery like this. So there we are. Anyway, when she died, it passed into various other hands. Various other prominent people lived here. But by far its most fascinating period was when the Countess of Suffolk was here, and she held a salon and invited prominent writers there, most notably Alexander Pope, who only lived about 2 miles west, that's that away, the illustrious poet of the early 18th century, part of the Augustan movement in poetry, writing, I'm just trying to think, the Rape of the Lock, for example. And Kew Gardens is not very far away, and Alexander Pope famously came up with this couplet to put on the king's dog's collar, saying, "I am His Majesty's dog at Kew, pray sir, whose dog are you?" And Kew is only a little bit over there. There was a royal palace there. So George II had been born in Hanover, and when his distant cousin Queen Anne had died, with no surviving children. The British government had been casting around for who was going to succeed her. The trouble is her 58 closest relatives were all Catholics. There was a lot of anti-Catholicism at the time, and the Act of Settlement had forbade anyone who was a Roman Catholic or married to a Catholic from succeeding to the crown. So they had to pass over 58 Catholic claimants to go to the 59th, the nearest Protestant claimant, George, the Elector of Hanover, as King George I. So King George I came over as a middle-aged man speaking limited English, and George II was in his late teens and was pretty good at English. But anyway, they set up the cabinet system. George I didn't want to be there all the time, couldn't quite keep up with the conversation, and of course wanted to be in Hanover quite a lot of the time. So their title was Elector of Hanover. Remember, there was the Holy Roman Empire then, this smorgasbord of some 303 score states, kingdoms, marquisates, or whatever you would say, free cities, archdioceses, sometimes archbishops were in charge, and counties, as in ruled by a count, and baronies, and on and on. So the emperor, the Holy Roman Empire, was elected by 7 men, and then there was this title Elector you could have if you're one of those. But sometimes an elector had another title, like Archbishop of Frankfurt, for example. And the Habsburg family, they called it that title, and they held it for centuries until the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire in 1806. But the Elector of Hanover later had his title raised to King of Hanover. So the two titles were held by the same person up until Queen Victoria, but Salic law applied to the Electorate of Hanover to say only a male could inherit, which is why she didn't inherit. One of her cousins inherited, and it was going till obviously the First World War. All those monarchies and so on in Germany were abolished, and some of her claimants were involved. So those who held the title, wasn't officially recognised, were involved in the Nazi Party in the Second World War. Anyway, back to the Countess of Suffolk. She also had Jonathan Swift coming here, the world-renowned Irish writer, author of Gulliver's Travels, for example, or A Modest Proposal. Dean Swift, Dean wasn't his name was Jonathan. Dean as in a clerical position. It's some sort of administrative position at a cathedral. I don't quite understand it, as he was Dean of St Patrick's Cathedral, Dublin. And when he was administering a parish, or looking after that, is somewhere in County Meath in Ireland, a bit north of Dublin. And in his parish, there are only about 20 Protestants. Obviously, most of us are Catholics in Ireland. It was the only job to have, a fine house and a handsome salary in return for almost no work. No wonder he found a lot of time to write. But he spent a lot of his time here as well, Dean Swift. So, if you've seen, I think it's called The Wild Geese, or is it The Flight of the Wild Geese, a 1979 film starring that actor from Richard Harris, Richard Burton, and I can't think whoever else, Hardy Kruger, God, what's his name? Kenneth someone or other, is it Kenneth Williams? The Welshman who was very pro-IRA, who died in about 2005. Anyway, a bit of it's filmed here, when Richard Harris comes to meet his son who's at boarding school, and there's some sort of game going on, and you see this in the background as though that's the school building. It's set in a fictitious African country where there's some monstrous tyrant and some mercenaries are hired to bump him off and liberate this political prisoner who's the leader of the opposition party and put him in there, all for a very handsome consideration as well. They're going to be a fat check paid out to these cutthroats who are interfering in the affairs of a sovereign state. But anyway, there we are. It's also filmed in front of here, not inside the building. The great room in there is magnificent, and this was a model for so many plantation manors, or what would you call them? I can't remember what we call them in the United States. Big houses, mansions, in various parts of the United States, particularly the southern states. Monticello, for example, Thomas Jefferson's residence, and on and on. So there wouldn't be an exact facsimile, but roughly based on this. Anyway, you can't see it from this angle, but the Thames is over there. Often they're travelling by river, and it's thought to be very fashionable to look out onto water. Okay, I shall switch it off now.